There's an article that came out. You said riots in Britain should be a warning to the U.S. And this is about a month ago, August 8th. And you were talking about in one of the interviews when you gave a stat, and I thought it was absolutely appalling. You said since 2008, of the jobs created by the British government since 2008, 74% have gone to people not born in Britain, right? In Britain. So one, why is this a warning to us, and how did Britain get here?
It's a very good question. The issue of that I touched on there were these riots recently in Britain, which I predicted for many years would happen. One of the reasons they happen, there are lots of reasons. One is that Britain, like America, has lost control of its borders. And on top of that, legal migration in the UK is at a historic high, legal net migration. Just to give some historic context, in the 1990s, legal net migration per year was in the tens of thousands. When the Conservative government left office earlier this year, it was at 750,000. Now that's net migration.
Legal.
Okay. Plus tens of thousands of people coming illegally on boats and through other means, possibly in the hundreds of thousands, that one as well. I've written about this a lot in the past. I wrote in my book, The Strange Death of Europe in 2017, about the integration challenges, the cultural challenges that come when you have migration at this kind of speed. But what you mentioned there, the piece I wrote in The Spectator and also in the New York Post about that, was people tend to find that the easiest bit to talk about in a way is the illegal migration. But what I was showing in that piece was that even if you take the legal migration in a country like Britain, which is very similar to all other Western European countries, you get this situation where it's got a benefit that's very clear to the government, because the migrants, of course, do add. They add financially, but not in the ways that everybody thinks. So in this particular case, the government can say, we've added X number of jobs into the workforce. But what they don't say is most of them have gone to people who were not born here. And my view is it kind of breaks one of the pacts between the electorate and the elected, which is that the electorate vote generally for something they think will make their lives better. They don't vote for something to make the lives of people who don't yet live in the country better. Mm-hmm. And so one of the points I've made for many years about this is if you grow the pie, but you give the pie to people who haven't been there for the baking, as it were, you break part of the pact. And the British electorate are pretty mad about this subject. And some of them, as they showed last month, are very mad indeed about it. I think that's it's a problem that's perfectly possible to deal with. There's no reason why a country like Britain or America cannot have an immigration system that brings in, talented people who are not going to be any kind of burden on the welfare state, and for whom the benefit of their migration doesn't just accrue to them. And that's one of the other things in this area that's very important is that the benefit of the migration largely accrues to the migrant, not to the society, in terms of the finance. The
benefit of is more towards a migrant than the society. Yes. So meaning people coming in are winning more than the people that have been loyal to that country all these years.
Yes.
So how does that logically make any sense? How does that logically make any sense to, not treat your kids as good as you treat, someone else's? I mean, you have to treat everybody equally, but it's your kids, it's your community, it's your people. Someone has to be sold that idea logically to say, yeah, that's the right thing we're doing.
I don't think they do, actually. I think you can fall into it from habit. There are lots of things that can make you feel better in the short term as people that are just not good for us, but they can make you feel better. I mean, if you'd laced my coffee with cocaine or MDMA, I would feel better, but it wouldn't be good for me.
Well, I wouldn't drink it if I were you, because that's what they told me they were doing, that to make you fired up. So just be careful with that.
I should.
But it was a little bit, so it shouldn't be too much of it.
But there are lots of things in the short term could make you feel better, but are not good for you long term. mass migration like that can make you feel better in the short term. As I say, it does grow the pie a little bit. It's just that people don't get a share in it. And the problem with the migration question, this is a problem that the Republicans will have to deal with here if they win in November, is that none of the answers to this are easy. I mean, it's like a drug. It's very easy to get into and quite hard to get off. In fact, very hard to get off. Take things like in Italy. It's a country I know pretty well. They had several years ago an election in which the main conservative running said that he was going to deport the 1 million illegals, which was estimated there were in Italy. I was never clear, even if he won the election, how he could do that. How on earth do you deport 1 million people?
Let alone 11 to 20 million in the U.S.
Right. And I have asked politicians in this country exactly the same question. How exactly do you do that? I mean, the government in America, like everywhere, is not that great at doing a lot of things. How on earth would you pull something like that off? My point is that when it comes to the issue of migration, what actually happens is it's just so hard to fix after you've opened the door that basically nobody does. I don't yet know of a Western country that has lost control of its immigration like America has or like Britain has, that has any idea of how to correct it. And I'm not against immigration per se. I think I believe that a society should have a sane immigration policy. Allow talented people in, allow a certain number of people in for humanitarian reasons, in exceptional circumstances. This benefits the society. But it doesn't benefit it if instead of being a sort of trickle of a tributary into the society as a whole, it's a flood, which you then can't do anything about. The reason, I haven't written about this that much since the strange death of Europe. One reason was that I had said almost everything I could say about it in terms of warning. And although a lot of politicians in America and Europe read the book, I was under the impression that they didn't know what to do about it. One politician said to me on the continent in Europe, this is a very depressing book for me to read. Mm-hmm. I said, you should have tried writing it. These are really big problems in the 21st century. And as you know, they're made particularly big, not just by the inability of Western leaders to do anything about it, but by the fact that 50 years ago, it was hard to get to America from Venezuela. 50 years ago, it was hard to get to Europe from sub-Saharan Africa. Today, travel is cheaper and easier than it's ever been, and everybody knows how other people in the world are living. I mean, that's one of the things that these devices we all have, we've underestimated. Everywhere I go in the world, you've been the poorest township in South Africa, everyone's got a device in their hands, and they can see what life could be like. And even if it's a life that we might not regard as being great ourselves, it's a lot better than a lot of the world. So I think in general, the liberal democracies, the capitalist countries, we've vastly underestimated our appeal and the number of people who want to come here. And if we don't have a sensible policy about this, this century is going to be a real problem.